together with you all. We, in addition to the questions that have come from our global online family, we also have another one that came in writing just here in advance that I'll start with. Haven't been able to get to it the last couple of nights. And then we'll open it up to any questions that anyone here might have. How to know the true purpose of our life. I am stuck in a mundane job just to survive. I don't enjoy it, but I feel stuck and life has become dull. So, how to renew the true purpose of our life? The dilemma comes when we look to what we do, our jobs, our careers, for our deepest fulfillment. Because in a lot of cases, they don't line up. And that's actually okay. There's no rule at all of happiness or joy or spirituality or success that says your job, your career must be the source of your inspiration, of your joy, of your divine connection. Sometimes it's just to put food on the table. And that's okay. A lot of us have gotten caught up in a movement that has a lot of beauty to it, but also a lot of challenges to it. And it's a movement around this idea that somehow, if you just find your purpose, not only will your life be joyful and beautiful and peaceful and wonderful, but it'll also put food on the table. And that isn't always true. Some people, their career overlaps their dharma, overlaps their joy, overlaps their purpose, overlaps their passion. It's lucrative and it's enjoyable, and that's beautiful and it's a great blessing. But it's not a standard that we should all hold out as the only way to do it. A lot of us have purposes and meaning in life that are very different from the way that we may make a living. If you look through history, so many of the really beautiful and impactful artists, musicians, poets were not people who made a living doing it. They were people who either had to have someone else pay the bills for them. There used to be in society this beautiful aspect of kind of patronage where people would take care of a beautiful artist or musician or poet or holy person, so they didn't have to also put food on the table. So they could create art or music or poetry or meditate and bless the world and teach people. That has changed in society over the last several generations. And I mention this because we shouldn't think that just because we can't make a living doing it, that something isn't actually our purpose. I've seen a lot of people become really discouraged. Oh, my paintings don't sell. Oh, my music doesn't sell. Oh, my writing doesn't sell. Therefore, it must mean I'm not supposed to do this. And it doesn't mean that at all, but what it may mean is that you need to take, a relatively meaningless but harmless job as a waiter or waitress or a clerk or a receptionist or something that's going to let you go 9 to 5, and it's not going to spill over into weekends and evenings, and it's enough that there's food on the table and there's clothes and your kids can go to school and you're not worried about a leak in the roof. But that also gives you enough time, actual time on evenings and weekends, and also mental time. So it's not a career that comes home with you in your mind. It's not something that's occupying your mind when you're not at work. It's just a simple kind of mindless thing that you're doing because, hey, money is the currency that most places work in, and if you want to buy groceries and you want to buy gas and you want to pay rent, you need to have some of it. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's a really important thing to realize. And so if you feel, as the person asking this question, stuck in their job, I would ask yourself, what are you looking for in your job? Are you expecting something of your job more than your job is meant to give you? And again, for some people, their job is going to also be their dharma, their passion, their purpose. But my guess is that the overwhelming vast majority of people, that's just not true for them. And that's really okay. As long as we're not expecting the job to be that. Because then we're frustrated. So if you're able to utilize your mornings, your evenings, your weekends, if you're able to really ask yourself, all right, fine, I get it. This is not going to be my passion. But it is going to allow me to eat, and it's going to allow me to send my kids to school, and it's going to allow me to take an occasional holiday somewhere. But maybe instead of working 40 hours a week, I could get by with 25 or 30. Like maybe I don't actually even need all of the money it gives me. Maybe I could have even more free time to actually do that which I feel is my purpose. A lot of people have a purpose in life that just is not something that necessarily money comes in exchange for. A lot of wisdom, a lot of gifts are not that the world is necessarily prepared to pay you for. And that's okay. We need to stop using how much someone's prepared to pay you for something as the measure of its worth or its value. When you are creating art or music or poetry or whatever it is, when you are meditating or dancing or making sandwiches for the homeless or reading to old people or volunteering in a children's hospital or all of the things we do that we do not get paid for, or planting trees in your garden or planting trees in other places. When you do those things, can you find in them that meaning, that what we call ras, that juice of life, that connection? And that's what the answer to it is. If you want to quit your job and wait for something that's going to pay you nicely and feel like it's your true meaning, I don't want to stop you from doing that. But you shouldn't do that unless you are also prepared to go hungry. Or unless you are also able through some other way to put food on the table. And so if you feel stuck in the job, really look in and say, am I trying here to milk orange juice out of a cow? like, orange juice is great, but it doesn't come from cows. Doesn't matter how good you are, doesn't matter how beautiful the cow is, doesn't matter how lovingly you milk it, doesn't matter any of those things. You'll never get orange juice from a cow. But if you're looking for it, then you're going to miss the beauty of the milk that comes from the cow, because you're going to let it all just fall down in while you wait for this orange juice. And you're also never going to actually go out to orange orchards and pick oranges and squeeze them to make orange juice, because you're convinced, I'm going to get it from the cow. And a lot of us do that in life. We look for something we want in a place that doesn't exist. And so A, we never find it. And B, we miss the gifts that that place gives us, because we're so busy looking for something else. And so if you feel stuck, my guess is it's not the job. My guess is it's your life in general, and how can you make yourself unstuck? You know, our scriptures are filled of stories of what we would consider low-level people, or low-caste people, or low-class people, working menial jobs, cobblers. Right? Saint Raidas was a cobbler. Not sure what could be a job of less dharmic meaning than fixing people's shoes. It's hard to imagine feeling like, this is my purpose in life, to fix shoes. But through being a cobbler, he was sharing wisdom and inspiration, touching people, transforming them. There's so many stories in, even modern day life. If you think about your life, I'm sure you can come up with them. Some lady at a grocery store, your checkout clerk who for years checked you out, or somebody at the local gas station, or somebody at the local flower shop, or a gardener. Somebody doing something that seems like a menial task, but who you see all the time and who seems to be finding a meaning in it. Through bringing people smiles, through bringing people joy, a barista at your local coffee place, or a waiter or waitress at a restaurant. Somebody who seems able to be anchoring into a joy, a meaning, a depth of life that is much more than the, pancakes or waffles that they're serving somebody. And that's what we should look for. One of my favorite examples of this is when you drive through the streets of India, but especially up in the mountains, you'll frequently see people, very, very poor people, hammering rocks on the side of the road. And you'll see some with piles of big rocks, and they're hammering them into medium-sized rocks. And some you'll see with piles of medium-sized rocks, and they're hammering them into little rocks. And then somewhere down the line, you'll see kind of a big metal tube pipe thing in which they're kind of melting the little rocks, and it's actually what becomes the asphalt on the road. And you look at these people hammering on the side of the road. Now, they didn't come onto earth with highest purpose rock hammerer tattooed on their rear ends. No one would dare insinuate to them that this is your purpose and you should feel something other than stuck in this job. And yet I think about the rock hammerer, the man who works double shifts so that his daughter does not have to beg on the road and she can actually go to the local school. All of the other kids are begging on the road. But this guy, personally uneducated, decides my daughter's not going to do that. And so he works double shifts. Now, he's not thinking in his mind, oh, my purpose is to start a revolution of women's empowerment. I am a social leader. I'm a revolutionary. He doesn't think like that. He just knows, not my daughter. This girl starts going to school. Slowly, slowly, the other girls in the slum area start saying to their parents, I want to go to school like my brother. Look, she goes to school. She goes with her brothers. Why can't I? And slowly, 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 it turns out that this man actually creates kind of a revolution. Because his daughter was the first girl in the slum to go to school. Now, chances are he's going to die before he even sees the ripple impact of that. Just because of the health hazards of their lives. So he's not even going to see what his life's purpose was, let alone have a deep awareness of it. But he was living it anyway. And to me, that's really important. We put one foot in front of the other, doing that which feels right to us, with faith and trust that that's the way our purpose and our dharma is going to unfold. And when we are confused, like Arjuna, we turn to God, we turn to the scriptures, we turn to our gurus, we turn to teachers, leaders, mentors, coaches, whatever it may be, people we trust, to guide us. But don't feel like it's your job's fault that you are stuck. It's your mind's fault that you are stuck. Because there's plenty of people who have worked a lot more menial jobs than you have, but managed to make their minds not feel unstuck. If you ask, just go right here, go out onto the streets of Rishikesh and ask the people sweeping the streets of Rishikesh how they feel. I've done it. So they say, oh, bas Bhagwan ki kripa. It's all just, it's God's grace. I have yet, in 27 years here, to hear one of them say, oh my God, me kaha fase wahun, this is, I wish I knew my purpose. They're doing it. It's their dharma to feed their families, to give back in some way to society, to get up every day and do something. But as far as purpose and deep meaning, well, it's not coming necessarily from sweeping the road, but it's going to come from something else. And that's what a lot of us have to do. So, yeah, if you can make the job and the highest purpose overlap, fantastic, God bless you. But if you can't, don't feel less than about that. Fulfill that higher purpose in all of those other beautiful hours you have in a day that you're not needing to use to feed the family. And ask yourself whether you can minimize your needs, minimize desire, so that you have to spend as few hours as possible in that job. And you can spend more and more hours doing that which is really fulfilling. Any questions that anyone here has? Okay, well, we'll take one from our online audience joining us from all over the world, and then we'll come back and give you all another opportunity in a moment. How can we remain grounded and steadfast in our truth when other people's thoughts, ideas, and opinions suggesting how wrong we are are so graciously offered to us by Sebastian in West Hollywood, California. So, how do we stay grounded and anchored in our truth when other people, through their thoughts, through their words, through their actions, which they share with us, keep telling us that we're wrong? So when other people criticize us and condemn us, how do we stay anchored and grounded in our own truth? One of the most core and important truths of life, I think, and teachings of life and lessons of life is no one on their deathbed regrets that they didn't get more approval from society in general or from their neighbors. I've never heard of anyone on their deathbed say, God, I wish I conformed a little bit more so that, there was more kind of general approval of the way I lived my life. What people on their deathbed tend to say is the exact opposite. God, I wish I hadn't spent so much of my time and energy worried about what other people thought about me and actually living my truth. I deeply believe that freeing ourselves of the prison of other people's opinions is one of the most important pieces of work we need to do. Otherwise, we're slaves. We live in free societies. We just celebrated 75 years of India's independence. We're all coming from countries that have been independent for different numbers of years, but we all come, we have from independent countries, we have the right to govern ourselves. In most places, we have the right to worship how we would like, to love how we would like, to make a living how we would like. We have the legal right to do that. By God's grace, most of us are not living, or perhaps any of us sitting here, are not living in cultures or countries in which someone is dictating how we can pray, how we can love, how we can earn a living, how we can eat, how we can live our lives. We've got total freedom. And then we stick ourselves in boxes. We voluntarily, consciously, willingly make slaves of ourselves. Oh, you don't like what I did? Okay, then I won't do it anymore. Now, if what we're doing is actually hurting another person, that's different. For me, the example that I think of is, so this is my arm. I have full freedom to do with it whatever I want. I can wave it, I can punch it back and forth, until and unless me doing this bops you on the nose. If when I do this, it hits you on the nose, well, your right not to be bopped on the nose is higher than my right to do whatever I want with my arm. But assuming that we're not actually harming another person, we have the right to live our lives however we would like. People will always criticize. If nobody criticizes you, you're not taking risks in your life. I'm going to repeat that because it's important. If no one criticizes you, you are not taking risks in your life. Because inevitably, when we take risks, they worry other people. And other people will tell us, don't do that. Now, some of them are going to tell us that because they really care. If you say, I'm going bungee jumping, chances are your parents, your loved ones are going to be like, don't, please don't. Because they're actually worried, you could fall and die. But most of the time when people criticize us, it's not because they're really concerned about us. It's because our choice is threatening their ego in some way. If I make a choice to live in one way, it's a mirror for other people. I remember when I decided to move back to India. It's been, 27 years since I first came and 26 and a half years since I decided and announced I was going to leave California and move to India. And as you can imagine, almost everyone told me I was crazy, that it was an awful, horrible mistake, that I should make sure to first get myself settled and do all of that, and then if I wanted to take, a year or two for a Peace Corps type of thing, as people envisioned this, that I could do that. But that I was crazy and stupid to do what I was doing. Now, Pujya Swamiji said something that was incredibly wise, as he's always incredibly wise. But it was also incredibly insightful about the culture of modern Western life and academics in California, which I didn't realize he understood so deeply. And this is actually why he sent me back to finish schoolwork, rather than just letting me stay here when I said I wanted just to stay. Because he said, look, people are always going to try to condemn you, to belittle you, to say, oh, she ran away, oh, she had a breakdown, oh, she went crazy, oh, she joined a cult, oh, she was brainwashed, oh, whatever it was, people will say whatever they want to say, so that they don't actually have to look at the possibility that someone who was not only surviving but thriving and succeeding in a high-level academic world chose to live in an ashram on the banks of Ganga in Rishikesh and to serve others rather than to make a bunch of money and build a house with a white picket fence and do the whole thing. He said nobody wants to believe that. Because then it's a mirror in front of their own lives, of the choices they're making. He said, so people will always try to criticize you, to belittle you. He said, that's why you must go back, because if you just call them and say, I'm not coming home, they'll always be able to say something happened to her. Not something good, something bad happened to her. She had a breakdown, she went crazy, she was kidnapped, brainwashed. And he said, if you're actually going to live here, you've got to serve as a model of someone who made that choice while succeeding here. He said, to renounce something you don't have is not renunciation. To renounce something you're failing at is not renunciation. It's running away. He said, you must go back. You must show them you can get A's. You must show them that you have not been kidnapped or brainwashed or gone crazy or had a breakdown or any of those things. Because then in your life you will be able to serve as this model. And I give that example because for Sebastian, your life choices are threatening for people, whatever they may be. It's a mirror for people against how they are not living. Anytime we live our freedom, whether it's what we do for a job, whether it's how we live in general, how we spend our time, how we worship, how we love, how we spend our money, whatever it is, if it's not in line with the most conformist way of society, people are going to criticize it. Because if they don't criticize it, it means that they've actually got to look at it with an open mind. And nobody wants to have an open mind. I mean, it's so much easier to just criticize the person who's different. But that's why it's important not to live your life based on what people say. People will always talk. The more good work you do, the more negative people will talk. It's kind of a direct line. Don't worry about it. Ignore it. There's a great leader of India who, many, many years ago, we were speaking with him, and when he was at the pinnacle, the height of his leadership. And so much nonsense and trash was being written about him. Complete fabrications. He was doing an extraordinary job in leading on so many levels, so many ways. And when we were sitting with him, Pujya Swamiji said to him, doesn't it bother you? You know, what do you do about all this negative stuff that's being written? He says, I never read it. Just don't read it. Why bother? I know it's there. Why read it? Who cares? So, in the same way, if people are criticizing you or condemning you, the very first thing you need to do is ask yourself, does this person actually have my best interest at heart? And if they do, then stop for a moment and listen. Because maybe they actually have something of value to share. And you may decide to listen or you may not. But at least hear them out with an open heart, because if they're really coming from a place of love and concern for you, then hear them out. Doesn't mean they're right. I remember my freshman year, my first year at Stanford, undergrad, we were only 18 years old. And a girl on my floor was very, very religious Christian. I was raised in a Jewish family, but we were not religious. But she was a very devout Christian, and she would always try to bring me into her room to study the Bible and to try to convert me to Christianity. And I remember saying to her, we're 18, who cares? Why are you doing this? Just stop. It's okay, let's talk about something else. And she said, if you were dying of cancer, and I felt that I had the cure, what kind of a friend would I be if I didn't try to push you to take it? Now, I share that story with you because obviously I did not convert to Christianity. But I heard her out of love because she was coming from a place of love. What she was suggesting was clearly not right for me. It was not the truth for me, but at least I listened and gave her a hug and again suggested we talk about different things. So listen to those if they're coming with love. But the majority of people who are going to criticize and condemn you are not coming with love. They're coming with only love for their own ego and their own fear. And whatever choices you're making are threatening their ego and are causing them fear. But your highest purpose is to live your own Dharma. So do it. The truth is a magnet, and if you live your truth and you live it with love and truth and compassion, it'll magnetize people. It'll magnetize people, not in the beginning, but eventually it will, because everybody is drawn to truth. We actually, at the core, we want truth. So live it. It'll draw most of them. Not all. There'll always be some who say, I can't believe what you're doing. But it'll draw most of them to you. Other questions? Yes. He's just bringing you a mic.
When you say that people, am I audible now? Yeah. When you say the people are not there because they love you, it's not out of love, but it is their own fear and ego. How do how do you demarcate? How do you differentiate whether this is coming from someone who loves you or someone who's had some other purpose?
Great. So you feel it. If suddenly, imagine today, as you said, she asked, for those of you who didn't hear, how do you know if someone is criticizing you or condemning you really out of love because they're really concerned for you, or whether it's just their own ego and their own fear? Well, chances are you have a history with that person. For example, if it's a parent, and that parent through your whole life has been very, very supportive of you, and has always really been on your side, helping you, supporting you, encouraging you. And that parent says, I think this is a very bad decision. Well, that would be something that you might want to really listen to. And again, I'm not saying that you absolutely must follow it, but listen, because for the decades of your life, this has been someone who has your back, who's really there to not thwart you, but encourage you and support you and help you. If it's a close friend, if it's a loved one, if it's a mentor, if it's someone who has supported you throughout your life and who has been there for you in love throughout your life, give them the benefit of a good listening to. Really listen. And give yourself some time to really digest what they're saying, because it's not always easy. But if it's someone with whom you don't have that type of relationship, if it's someone who, has been in your friend's circle but never really that close to you, or maybe they were close but you always got a feeling that they were kind of jealous of you and kind of competing with you, even though they never really said it like that. You feel it, you know it. When somebody's offering advice to you, a lot of times we can feel it. And if not, listen to anyone. It doesn't cost you anything, just a few minutes to listen. The worst that happens is you waste a few minutes listening to somebody tell you their concerns. I always believe God sends messages and messengers in a whole variety of ways. So take whatever comes as a sent from God, listen to it, evaluate it, and check, how does it feel inside? Not what's your immediate reaction to it, but bring it into your meditation, bring it into your contemplation. Allow it to sit with you for not just 30 seconds, but a few days. How does it feel? And you'll know. You'll know if it's right for you or not. Yeah. The people who tend to give you advice that's not in your best interest tend to be people who have some agenda in upholding the status quo. Like the dean in my PhD program telling me I was making a horrible mistake. Or other students in the program, not very, very close friends, but people who had committed themselves to this, and for whom it was really threatening to think, oh my God, there might be another option. Oh my God, someone is in this program getting straight A's and leaving it? So they don't want to hear that. Another good way to know is in general, and this, by the way, goes for all sorts of life advice. A really good question to ask if you're trying to decide about whether to take someone's advice or not is, how happy are they with their own lives? Someone who is deeply happy in their own life, who feels deeply fulfilled in their own life. They don't need to put you down or bring you down or hold you back in order for them to feel okay. Someone who themselves is not so deeply fulfilled is much more likely to need these kind of cheap shot ways of temporarily feeling good by kind of holding other people back. The misery loves company model of friendship. Hey, I'm miserable, stuck in this stupid life. Why shouldn't you be? You know, it's that. They don't say it like that. But that's what's going on, is the sort of how dare you, who do you think you are, we're all stuck in this, don't think you're something special. That, you know, it's that type of energy that comes from someone who themselves is stuck and unhappy. Only take advice from people who have, on whatever level they're giving you advice on, figured it out themselves. You know, in the same way that you wouldn't take diet advice from someone who was 400 pounds. Right? I mean, if you look at the people who are selling diets or exercise equipment or some kind of healthy food or whatever, like they're all slim and trim and healthy, and because they know 400 pound super overweight, out of shape people are not going to be the best models for your protein bar or your exercise program or your protein shake or whatever it may be. Because intuitively we know I only want to take advice from someone who knows what they're doing. I mean, similarly, a doctor, if you go to the doctor and your doctor is, you know, again, overweight and out of shape and coughing and looks awful and their eyes are all bloodshot, like, I mean, are you really going to listen to the guy about what to do for your health? You're going to think, Pele, did take care of yourself and then let me know how you did? Same thing goes for life. Look at how are their lives going, and is it what you want? And then decide who to take advice from. Any other questions? Yeah, in the back. Uske baad. No, for you now, and then the man behind you after. Yeah. नहीं, पहले उसको दे दीजिएगा जिसके पास है. Yeah.
Thank you. So I wanted to ask this, that usually we are very certain about what we want in the short term, like today, tomorrow, or in a month. How do we decide what do we really want in the long term?
Great question.
And how do we know for sure that all those wants are own real or like our truth or probably influence?
Beautiful, beautiful. How do we know what we want in the long term? It's going to be an ever-evolving process. As your mind changes, so will your wants change. As you do more and more sadhana, as your buddhi, your intellect, gets more and more refined and pure, what you want will change. This happens to all of us when we embark on a spiritual path. For most of us, there was a time in our life where what we wanted was to eat and drink and be merry and have a good time and go to the movies and go to parties and go shopping. And then we have some kind of a spiritual experience, or we come onto a spiritual path, and we start going deeper and deeper. And we start meditating, and we start doing yoga, and we start doing seva, and we start reading spiritual literature and listening to spiritual people. And suddenly that shopping trip doesn't seem quite so exciting anymore, and suddenly like a night out drinking beer just doesn't really sound like the way we want to spend our evening. So what you want is going to change. And that's a good thing. But along the way, it's good to take stock of where are you now. Once a year, maybe twice a year. I mean, you don't want to do it every day or you're going to drive yourself crazy. But, maybe once a year, maybe twice a year, sit down and really evaluate. What am I looking for? What are my long-term goals? Have they changed since the last time? And what are the ways that I'm living each day to achieve those long-term goals? If my long-term goal is to be very healthy and vibrant and to have good longevity, but I'm eating junk food and I'm never exercising and I'm not sleeping on time, well, how I'm living is not in alignment with fulfilling my long-term goal. If I have a long-term goal of making $10 billion, but as of yet I don't have a job, I'm not really walking toward the fulfillment of that goal. Make a list. There's no goal police. Nobody's going to tell you what the goals have to be, but dive deep. And really ask yourself, in your life so far, what have been the moments that have brought you the greatest joy, the greatest sense of meaning and fulfillment? And use those as kind of a North Star to think about. What are the things in life that actually bring fulfillment? Read books, listen to talks by people who are philosophers, spiritual teachers, even in many cases, business leaders who have achieved a lot but then discovered that actually life is about something else. People you respect, people you admire. What are they saying about life goals? And set some goals. And then along with the goals, what are the practices? What are you going to do over the next 6 months or a year to start walking toward that? And then reevaluate. Keep reevaluating. How's this going? Is this still a goal? And if it is, am I getting closer? And it's a constant state of refinement as your mind gets refined. And it's a beautiful aspect of life because you get to create them. And the truth is, there's no wrong goal, as long as it doesn't hurt someone else. But it's up to you to really decide, what is my greatest fulfillment come in? And you're old enough to already have had moments of fulfillment and joy. Ask yourself, what was I doing then? For most of us, those moments are moments of deep connection. Connection with God, connection with ourselves, connection with nature, connection with another being. For most of us, there are moments of giving and serving, using our abilities to actually make something manifest, to help something, to expand something, to improve something, to create something. But ask yourself, check in with yourself, what are the moments that have been the most deeply fulfilling in my life? And then think about goals based on that. Good. Yes, last question.
साध्वी बहन, मैं आपसे हिंदी में प्रश्न कर रहा हूँ.
कोई बात नहीं. I'll translate after.
आलोचना से तो आदमी का परिष्कार होता है, लेकिन आपके लक्ष्य के प्रति कोई षड्यंत्र करने लगे, उस समय हमें क्या करना चाहिए?
How to move forward with our goals when we are being challenged, thwarted, opposed by the universe, by forces of the universe, by karma, whatever it may be, obstacles. ये है ना? Keep moving. If the goal is a right goal, see, we are not separate from the universe. We're not separate from the divine plan. And that's why this great teaching of not my will, thy will be done is really the core to not only a successful life, but to a happy life. Because if I want to do my will, A, I'm fighting against the nature of the universe. B, the universe doesn't listen. It's got its own laws of nature. It's not that it doesn't take me into consideration, it does, but only insofar as I am in alignment with, in flow with, the flow of the universe. Right? The example that I always give about this is, you can stand outside in your bikini at the end of summer, but that's not going to prevent winter from coming. You can scream and yell and refuse to put on a sweater, but winter's still going to come. The weather is not going to say, oh, वो तो bikini पहनना चाहती है, चलो ठीक है. इस बार winter नहीं आएंगे, इस बार गर्मी ही रहेंगे. You'll just catch pneumonia. Winter will still come. But if what we are moving toward is in alignment with, in the flow of what the universe wants, it's going to happen anyway. We just have to work for it. And so this is where it's so important to align ourselves. What is God's will here? What is God's will? And to move forward with that. You face obstacles? Okay. There's lots of obstacles on our path. I mean, if you look at our scriptures, if you look at the two major epics given in our scriptures, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the times in which God came on earth in human form, in a very human form with a full human story and relationships and drama and whatnot. Each time, the pathways, the paths, were full of obstacles. I mean, Krishna's born in jail. His own uncle tries to kill him God knows how many times before he's even 5 or 6 years old. Ram gets exiled out to the forest. 14 years. Not to mention his wife being kidnapped and all the fights with the demons, right? Obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. Some from karmic packages. I mean, he had to go to the forest. We may blame Kahike, we may blame his stepmother or the helper who, polluted her mind. But actually, the reason that all of that had to happen goes all the way back to Shravan Kumar. King Dashrath needed to die with a broken heart about losing his son because that was the curse given by Shravan Kumar's parents. Kahike was just a thread in the karmic package. It's not her fault. We blame her when we only see this much of the story. We say, oh, she was the obstacle. She wasn't the obstacle. There was no obstacle. Karma was unfolding. If it hadn't been for this curse of Shravan Kumar's parents, Bhagwan Ram might have never even been born. Right? The whole Leela began with that curse by Shravan Kumar's parents. So, they've taken birth, Bhagwan Ram, Bhagwan Krishna have taken birth with these stories of challenge and challenge and challenge and challenge and obstacle, I think, to teach us how to deal with obstacles in life. I mean, they're God. They could have come in any story, right? I mean, God's coming on earth. God could have magic wanded any story God wanted. But they didn't. And I think that's the message for us. Sometimes the obstacle is nature. Sometimes the obstacle is someone else's ego. Sometimes it's just that the fruit isn't yet ripe. We're trying to pluck an unripe fruit. It's not ready. But we keep going, we keep going, we keep going with faith. Yeah, beautiful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. There will not be satsang for the next 6 days. I am going to be heading up into the mountains tomorrow to sacred sources of the Ganga River, of the Yamuna River, going up to Gangotri and Yamunotri and other beautiful places in the Himalayas. We'll be back on the 16th. So for those of you who will still be here on the 16th, I look forward to seeing you all back here then. Those of you who unfortunately have to leave before then, feel free to send your questions in. You can send it by email. You can put it in the comments under the videos on YouTube or Facebook. Send it in and our team gives them to me then on these pieces of paper. And we'll take your questions then at that time online, and then you can get the answers then. But I hope to see as many of you as possible back on the 16th, and that you can stay back in this holy area till then. And so much love to you all.